Hello, I'm Susan Iman, the Executive Director of the Lethbridge Sport Council. We are proud to welcome you to the YQL Stories, which stands for Your Quality Life Stories, where we have the privilege to talk with friends we've met through sport. We're pleased to have you join us to hear about their experiences and explore how sport and active living can impact your quality life.
Hello everyone. Today we have the pleasure of hearing from Micheal Barwegen, a soccer referee who represented Canada on the world stage at the 2024 Paris Olympic Games. Starting his career at just the age of 12 years old in Coaldale, Alberta, Micheal has since risen to the top of international refereeing, officiating major events such as the CONCACAF Gold Medal, FIFA U-17 World Cup, and more. In this interview, we'll explore his Olympic journey, the pressures of high-stakes officiating, and his role in inspiring the next generation of referees. Welcome to YQL Stories podcast. I'm Alex Engel, and I'm your host today. We have the privilege of speaking with Micheal Barwegen, a celebrated soccer referee from Coaldale, Alberta, who has achieved remarkable feats on the international stage. Micheal began his officiating journey at the age of 12 in Coaldale, Alberta. Since then, he has climbed the ranks to become one of Canada's top referees, earning a spot on the FIFA list of referees in 2018. His career highlights include officiating in MLS, Major League Soccer, the Canadian Premier League, and several prestigious international tournaments such as CONCACAF Gold Cup and the FIFA U-17 World Cup. Recently, Micheal officiated the 2024 Paris Olympics, and that is a testament to his dedication, expertise, and passion for the game. Join us as we delve into Micheal's incredible journey from local grassroots games in Alberta to the grandish stages of world soccer. Micheal, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you. How are you doing?
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
Good to hear.
Very excited to be here, give you kind of that look behind the curtain.
Yeah, it's a perspective that's not always covered, and I always find it very interesting. Just, refs are always talked about. People have opinions on them, and
of course they do. They always have opinions on the calls, and they always hate the guy who's out there doing any sport.
Yeah, but, and they don't quite have the views that they do, I'm assuming.
No, definitely
or the timing.
Not. So.
We'll get into that a little bit later, don't worry. But I kind of want to start from the beginning. So what kind of got you into refereeing, especially age of 12? That's pretty young.
Yeah, that's pretty young. Lately, they've actually pushed that age up for younger people to get involved, particularly involved with parents around fields and stuff. So usually around 14, unless it's really, really small soccer. So when I was 12, we hadn't switched that yet. And so it was an opportunity as like the part-time job where you got to kind of set your own availability. Cool. In Coaldale, doing the little kid soccer, the ones where the bumblebees are chasing all the same ball.
Little strikers or
exactly. Everybody's just doing everything there. And so, it was one of those things. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll try this out. Yep. And so it was a 2-day course on a weekend. And nice. I think I did it Saturday and Sunday, and I was supposed to referee like the following Wednesday. And I got a call Monday night, right away. And it was like the next Wednesday or the Monday. They're like, actually, we're short. Can you get over to Kate Andrews Field and do a game? And I hadn't even gone out and bought myself a stopwatch yet. I had to borrow my dad's like analog one, and like I had certain things, but that was the baptism by fire there when I was 12, and it was just to make some extra money, just for go to the corner store or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Way, right?
Yeah,
and so that was the reason for just getting involved there, and it was something that kind of stuck.
That's awesome. And was it always soccer? Or did you try officiating other sports? I don't know.
It was always soccer. I mean, when at that time I was playing, obviously, house league in Coaldale, and then did a little bit of the summer games kind of stuff. Nice. But at that point, I was just doing the soccer kind of thing, and so it was enjoyable to the point that when I was about 16, 17, like finishing up high school, I was looking at my availability of time. And I was like, look, I could practice 2 nights a week and play 1 night a week and then have tournaments and whatever and try and ref in between that. Yeah. Or, if I just stopped playing a little bit more and I could just focus on this. So that's kind of what I did this
around
is a way
16,
to make money.
You said?
Yeah, around 16, 17, right towards the end of high school there, like end of grade 11, started grade 12. And I was like, okay, this isn't so bad. And so started doing that more, and there were like the provincial tournaments in the area. And so as I was older, I was invited to those. And it was going well enough that people are like, no, you kind of know what you're doing. Like, and I was like, well, I've been doing this for 5 years now. I mean, like that
a little bit of a step ahead.
Exactly.
Just
a little, exactly. Right. Even like older people who are older than I in that position, they've just started and they're like, well, how do you? And I'm like, well, I've been doing this for a while, right? So it gave me a little bit of a head start.
Can't really
there.
judge a book by its cover in those
Exactly.
situations, I guess, right?
So.
And so you played up until 16-ish,
Yep.
17.
Like 16, 17 competitive. Played a little bit afterwards, but like I
Okay.
really started focusing on reffing at that point.
Gotcha. And was that ever tough, like playing both sides? Because you hear, like teams get upset and stuff like that, and players they always have an opinion. But being like, did you find it made you a different type of player, or?
I think it made me have a better perspective on what was happening. I probably didn't always agree on the calls that were happening. I remember like there was a tournament that I was at and I was doing both, and things were not going our team's way. And I'm not blaming the official or anything. We were terrible. Yeah. But at the same time, like I was like, really? That's how you see that? And I was like, okay. But then on the flip side, having that perspective when things were weird, I was usually the one to go like calm the team down and be like, guys, no, he's actually correct here. So you need to be quiet. Like stop yelling. You have no idea what you're talking about. So,
Exactly.
Shut up, get off the field.
Little out of your wheelhouse here, guys.
Exactly. So.
Well, that's cool, because that's something I always thought. I reffed a little bit when I was younger, growing up playing hockey and stuff, and that's something that I felt I had more respect for officials for sure.
Right.
So that's something that
you just need that perspective,
exactly.
right? Like once you do it for a year, and then come back and
miss one big call, and you'll be like, "Ooh, that can really happen to me. I guess it can happen to anybody, right?"
Whoops! I thought I was better at this.
Yeah, exactly. So then we move on. I'm not really sure. You mentioned you get scouted. So is that kind of a selection process that goes? Like, when does the scouting start?
So as I was doing some of those younger youth clubs, obviously there are people in charge of the different areas of the province, we'll say, in charge of referees and assigning the tournaments in those regions. And so what they would do is they would kind of look, and the people who are doing well on the weekend, they'd like write their name down, and it's on a piece of paper, and it goes to an office at Alberta Soccer. And so eventually from there, somebody was like, hey, no, you actually, you kind of know what you're doing. Like, this is good. And I was like, okay. And so you get invited to another, like maybe tier 1 provincials, and they give you a couple games. And they're like, no, you're good. And we have at those bigger tournaments or higher level tournaments, you would get like assessed. So our games are graded by somebody who usually is a older official or someone who has is no longer actively reffing, but is giving back, that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And so they give that feedback, and there's a grading process, and they have to do a report, and all of that goes up.
Makes sense.
One of the things in the area of Lethbridge, as I entered university, was we have the Alberta Major Soccer League team here for the men's and women's. We have the college men's and women's team, and we have the university men's and women's teams, which is 6 teams. And these games would start probably in April or May, and they would go till October. But there's not that many referees in the region who would do these games. And so I got assigned as an assistant referee or linesman, right? To those games probably earlier or when I was younger than perhaps somebody in a larger city center would have.
Gotcha.
Pure numbers game,
right? Supply and demand.
Exactly. Supply and demand. And so once I started doing those, you're getting more assessments. People are seeing you, and people are like, hey, this person really knows what he's doing, and he's doing a good job. And you get that. It's a little bit of a carrot in front of you, because when you do better, then they're like, okay, we're going to give you like the college men's game on the line now instead of just the women's. And then you're like, oh, that goes well. And then they're like, okay, now you're going to do a CIS game and watch everybody scream at you there, but you still do a great job, right? And so the same thing kind of happens as you build up that way, like you would any other sports team. Is you're earning your spot within the framework of the community or the team. And so I got to make sure I get in 2011, I would have been appointed to a national championship, and it was in Fredericton, New Brunswick.
Wow.
And so each province basically takes their top selected candidate, 1 or 2 people, and you get sent over there, and you can think of it as basically like a training camp. So all the top referees from all the provinces they put them all together, and here's the games. And it's a U-18 tournament at that time is what it was. And men's and ladies. And it was like, okay, everybody's going to do 1 time in the middle, 1 time as an assistant referee. And then we're going to assign you based on games and how things go. And they evaluate you there. And at the end of that tournament, it was, that was in Thanksgiving. And then you would get invited towards the end of the year, starting next year, to be joining the national list of officials for Canada. Wow. And so those are the people who would do, back in that day, it would have been the NASL or like the MLS reserve teams or like that kind of level inside Canada before the CPL.
That makes sense,
So nowadays, if you were to equate that, it's not a U18 tournament. They tend to send them to the men's and women's like nationals, senior nationals. And you would get invited to a training camp and get compared, and then to do CPL games, and that's how you get in.
That's
and
so
it's
cool.
it's like any other sports team, right? Like if you're doing
pretty
terrible,
strenuous.
they're not going to take you.
Yeah.
And if you're showing well, then you get invited to the team in the program.
That's
and then
amazing.
you kind of want to maintain your spot, so you really don't want to start like losing form, and you kind of stay on top of your
you
game.
have a standard to maintain, I guess. At that
Exactly.
point, right?
And so it's weird because like that day that I was on Thanksgiving, I was on like the women's gold medal game in the end, and I went there, and one of the things that I did, I really enjoyed being an assistant referee, and I didn't really love being in the middle. Like I could do it, and you know, sometimes my dad's like, "Oh, I think you could have done it." I'm like, "Dad, kind of things have worked out, okay? Like
we're doing pretty good now.
We're doing pretty good." But it was one of those when I got there, and they knew, and so they went, "Okay, here's your line, and here's the middle, and it's going to be the farthest field away from all of the spectators. Like, just don't mess it up, right? Like, just don't be bad." And then from there, I just did what I enjoyed. And they gave me, here's a line with this guy, with this guy, with this guy, different guys from the provinces, working with guys from all across the country that I just met. And we're all meeting each other and trying to do the best job we can at this tournament. And so
cool.
in 2012 I got invited. I obviously succeeded at that tournament. Got invited to the program. And so we go to training camp and run your fitness test, and you do the laws of the game exam. And then suddenly you have a new badge. Instead of just the black and white Canada referee badge, now you have the colored one. And that's cool. Kind of like, that's the goal, right? You want to get there, now you're on the team, right? And it's like, nothing really changed in terms of what I did in, October compared to February at training camp. But suddenly there's this new expectation on you, because now you're carrying like the national logo. Like if I went
you're
out
representing.
if I went to Calgary and did a U16 game and someone saw the colored badge instead, they're like, no. Like, the bar is automatically higher for you. Like, you need to be able to
We're going to hold you to a higher standard.
Exactly. So just like any team, when you make that first team or whatever the first time, it's like nothing's changed from yesterday to today, but the expectations are just that much.
It's kind of like when a professional athlete or whatever gets that big pay raise. It's like, all right, you're a $10 million player. You're no longer a $5 million player. Now
you got to get going, right? And so you got to earn what you're doing there. And so that's kind of how that whole system kind of works. And it still works the same today, where it's just like, there's assessments and there's coaching, and everybody's kind of helping you along the way. And there's lots of mentors within the province who helped get me to where I am today, right? And like I send them thank you, and I'm like, they know who they are.
And you're learning, and
always learning,
each game, probably, right? You're like,
exactly. You're learning something. You're like, that is new, and you still get text messages, and they're like, I watched your game. This week it was really awesome to see you out there. And then now I get, from the younger people in the province, they're sending me, okay, what is this here? Like,
now they're coming. You're kind of getting the mentor.
You're the new person on the side going. You're the authority when it comes to who they know, or at least who they can contact.
The new big dog in town.
Exactly.
Might say, yeah. That's awesome. And then so that was 2011ish when you just got it.
And then 2012 was the first year that I was doing pro games.
And then fast forward a couple years to 2018. That's when you made the FIFA list?
Yeah,
so similar, just bigger
similar, just bigger things. Gotcha. So there was a tournament down in the US that I went to, down in Dallas. I did a game there, and people are scouting you again, and things, went well for me, and people kind of noticed, and it was like, okay, this is good. And then I got an email, and I want to say it was like in August of 2017, and it was just, here's the forms. Can you fill these forms out and send them back to us? And it was like the big FIFA logos right on top. And it's like, we want to nominate you to FIFA. So we're going to take all your information. We're going to send you up to CONCACAF, and then they'll forward it on. And they're like, are we going to accept you? And you're going to be an international referee for Canada or not? And so they kind of send in the information. And at that time, I was just doing the pro games in Canada.
Okay.
And so
CPL?
CPL hadn't started yet. So that would have been FC Edmonton before they were in the CPL.
Gotcha.
And so I was doing those games, going up to Edmonton probably 2 out of 3 weekends sometimes. Like driving up there. It was very huge time commitment.
That's a fun trek.
So that is very long and fun trek again and again and again. That highway never changes. So they sent out the documents, and I was like, okay, I'll fill it out. And it's like, hey, you got to run a fitness test, and you run the fitness test and send in the fitness data. And they're like, okay. And so in December, I'm pretty sure I got the letter that it had been accepted. So at the same time, I got accepted. Cool. FIFA list. They mailed out the thing. Here's a FIFA badge. Here's like the integrity booklet on like how to avoid like scandal and like match fixing. These are things to watch out for, because this is a huge worldwide thing. Suddenly you're involved in this.
Yep.
And so January 31st in 2018, I got off a plane and was doing games in Trinidad. And that was my very first FIFA event. It was the Caribbean Club Championship when it was 4 teams playing a round robin thing. So there was like 3 match days. I flew down to Trinidad, and that was my first experience. It was like, I'm getting off the plane. I am nobody to like anybody here, but like I was the Canadian who was dying in the sun at that. It's
I
January.
can imagine
like
the sweat stains.
Come on, I'm not acclimatized yet. It's still January.
You're leaving in your coat, and
it's cold at home, and so I got off there and did 3 games down there, and everything went very well there, and people were happy, and so it just happened to be one of those things again where games start. You're taking your spot, you're doing well, and you're just growing on the experiences and kind of just like enjoying every moment, because you never know like when it's going to stop, right?
When you're driving, like any job that allows you to travel for work,
for sure,
kind of
right?
Cool
it's kind of cool. It can be tiresome, but there are positives and negatives to that. But
like anything though, kind of, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. But if you're not enjoying it, then I probably wouldn't be doing it anymore, right?
Exactly.
And
so like, I assume you have to be a fan of the sport from that young age
definitely.
too, right?
Yeah, I was obviously watching some of the games and like MLS when I was younger and stuff like that, and particularly the Canadian national team. That's something that everybody watches when that comes on, and everybody's like, oh, the team's playing again. I'm like,
the country stops for a little bit.
Exactly, the country stops just for that little bit.
And so you mentioned MLS. When did that come into play?
So that was actually 2019.
Okay, so I had 1 year after that.
Yeah, so in 2017 I had a trialist game. And for whatever reason, they decided not to take me onto list there, because that's an employment. So you become a contract employee then there's minimum games, et cetera, et cetera. So at that point, they're like, nope, we don't need a guy. So in 2018, I got a FIFA badge, and actually another guy in Canada got a FIFA badge at the same time.
Wow, okay.
And so we were both in the same position to go to MLS.
Gotcha.
Now, I'll talk about logistics, but he lived near an MLS team, and I live here. So in terms of like what was kind of a little bit easier to jump into that league, he got in and he's doing great. There's no problem. He's still officiating in the league, and I did not. But that also opened up my availability on the international side a little bit more. So now on the international, they're like, hey, let's send you down to Honduras, El Salvador, Costa Rica, all of these places. And I was like, okay, in the summer, school, like I'm a teacher, so school was out, and I was like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
So we did a couple tournaments that year, and so I got another trial game. Both were in Vancouver, so I was out doing a Whitecaps game.
Wonderful.
And so that second game I got out, and everything went well. It was really weird because the first one was pre-VAR. So we didn't have the video review system.
Yeah.
And the second one, it was like I was on my way there, and I was like, hey, like calling up one of the referee friends I know. I'm like, I've never done a game with VAR. Like, what do I need to change? What changes? And he was like, oh, yeah, we should talk about that. I was like, okay,
there's a couple things.
The game is tomorrow, but just so you know.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. That one went well. And then so in 2019 was the first year that I was hired, and I flew down to training camp in Dallas. And then it was, I think at that time in our contract, it might have been like 10 games. So you're guaranteed 10 games through the season. And then it's kind of built from there. I think that first season I did 10 or 12. And then 3 years ago, I think I did like 30, right? Like, so
that's
like it
cool.
kind of builds up, and, you build your way into the team, and you kind of do all you can. And hopefully, your work speaks for yourself.
Yeah, I was going to say, anything you do well, they're probably going to keep you coming back.
Exactly, right? And there's people, and for me, it was something that suited what I had kind of looked for. It wasn't when I started at 12 going, I'm going to go referee, at the Paris Olympics. Like that was never a thought. It was one of those, somebody in Lethbridge was like, hey, have you ever thought about doing this at a higher level? And I went, no. He's like, well, do you want to? I'm like, yeah, okay. I think I could try, and let's try it. And so it kind of just built from there.
That's cool.
And people opened doors and pathways. And so that really worked out that way.
Wow. That's amazing. Because that's kind of like, I don't know, a thing I've always been taught by coaches and people I've heard that I hold to a high standard is you get out of something what you put into it. So that's kind of what it seems like here, right? Like you started from that grassroots level and you worked your way all the way up, put in the time, put in that training camp. That's not something you just, you're hanging out on the beach all summer. There's training regiment to it.
So we're definitely doing our training, and even once we're hired in MLS, and even the Canadian guys who are in the CPL, we have fitness coaches. And so I'm wearing a fitness watch right now when I do my workout at god awful 6 a.m. this morning before I go to work.
Good for you.
They're getting all that heart rate data and the GPS data, so they know.
Wow.
Like, so we get daily workouts sent to us
really
for
cool.
5-6 days a week. So they're tracking all of that because we're an asset and an employee to them as well, right?
That
so,
accountability. If my boss had that, I wouldn't be able to just
let me
shake
tell you,
the wrist or whatever.
It's
right?
a huge motivator to work
I
out,
imagine.
though. Like, suddenly it's like, oh, this is my job, so now you kind of have to do it, right?
Yeah, and like that's a easier way to do it too. Like, you know what? I'm getting paid to do this.
Yeah, exactly. This is part of my job.
Yeah.
So,
hey everyone, Alex here. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just wanted to take a quick minute to talk to you about some opportunities we provide here at the Lethbridge Sport Council. So we run several programs throughout our community, such as our drop-in youth program, our roving gyms program, and our sport volunteer hub. These help provide inclusive sport access to youth and individuals of all ages and backgrounds. And did I mention that these programs are free of charge? Yeah, you heard me right. They're completely free. Please check out the links in our episode bio if you are interested in learning more about our programs and our volunteer opportunities. And if you want to do your part in providing a platform for our community programs to thrive, donations are greatly appreciated and can be done so by clicking the donations link in our bio. Thanks for listening, and now, back to hearing from our Olympians. And I want to get to the Olympics, but really quickly before we touch on that, the FIFA U-17 World Cup.
Yes.
Is that the first major worldwide World Cup you'd had?
Yeah, that would have been the first FIFA event that I did. First FIFA event. So that works the same way. CONCACAF chooses people to send.
Yep.
I went as a trio with a Mexican referee, a Costa Rican AR, and I was the other AR.
That's super
and
cool.
So the three of us together kind of went as a team to Brazil. And did the U-17 World Cup there, and that was a great experience. We were hanging out in Brasilia for most of the time. Got out to Goiânia, I believe was the other city we did games in.
Very cool.
And so that was really cool, and it was. It's a great event, and you're suddenly thrust into this international stage. And I mean, it's a youth tournament, but the spectators in the stands were not treating it like a youth tournament, right? Like, that's right. Like, you're doing some of those bigger teams, and like they're flying in, and like Pierluigi Collina, right? Like the guy, he's the head of FIFA. He comes to the tournament, and he's telling us like, you're chosen. And I'm like, look, you know more than I do. If you're telling me I deserve to be here, I don't believe you, but hey. Thanks for the compliment, right?
Exactly.
And so it's those kind of things. So that would have been the U-17 World Cup, and then I would have also done in 2021 was the FIFA Arab Cup. So in Qatar, the year before the World Cup, was a tournament to basically test all the facilities and set up teams and stuff. So there was a tournament there. So I was down there with. To Mexican referee, I was the first assistant, and there was another Mexican assistant as a team of three, and we went down there. So we were in the World Cup stadiums for 2022 and doing games there. And again, like super cool experience. It was awesome to see different parts of the world, different parts of the country, different cultures,
so cool.
Different styles of football or soccer, right? Like that,
of course.
Totally
different,
right?
Styles,
different coaching
strategy,
the expectations or what people accept as a foul versus not. I mean, those are all different things that you kind of have to adapt to real fast. So it was a flight over there, and then it was like, here's 5 days of training trying to get everybody on the same page. And then away we go. And that's how the FIFA tournaments generally are. Which is exactly what kind of happened leading into Paris. As well.
And then we get to, so you find out you're going to Paris. What's that? What's going through your? Talk me through your emotions there.
I knew that there was a possibility. So obviously, like there are ways that selections are made within each of the major regions of the world. So there's CONCACAF, which is North and Central America and the Caribbean.
Of course.
So they're going to send some number of referee teams. Over to the Olympics. And I was like, okay, that would be cool. That's a good goal to have. And I was like, okay, that would be neat. And so I was working with Drew Fisher from Calgary and Leah Sarfa from Quebec. And so the three of us were a team, and we had done some games together in MLS, and we kind of did a few here, and we're kind of treated as a little bit of a team within the bigger team of referees. And so I was actually out at the Tabor pool with my wife and daughter. We had just finished like family swim or whatever. And I got a text from Drew, and he had just gotten like the unofficial, like, because look, you would think we find these things out with huge, like big horns and celebration. No. We find out the same way most people do, which is usually through social media and somebody like leaked a photo
you
or
see
something.
a tweet or something like that.
So he found and saw, here's the leaked list, or here's the list that he
Wow.
got sent, and he sent it to me, and he's like, guys, I guess make sure your summers are available. And I was like reading the text message in the list, and my wife is putting my daughter in the car at the minute, and I just like jumped up and like let out, I'm like, yeah! And my wife's like, what? Is there a bug? Like, and I was like, no, here. And I just let her read it. And so we had a nice little moment to celebrate there. And it was, so amazing. We knew it was kind of coming as a possibility, but you don't know until you actually get it. And then when we got the actual invite letter with all of the things we had to do to get actually over there, that came in. So that was really, then it became like official. Cool. And it's like, okay, so now I'm going to Paris.
It's happening.
Now it's happening, right? And so that was kind of that first step to cool. This summer. So
Olympics, we talked a bit about training. With the Olympics specifically, did you have a different training regimen? Did you have a more, like, was there a different, I don't know how to say, preparation, I guess, mindset-wise?
So mindset-wise, because I had done international tournaments before, I kind of knew what I was getting into. It was going to be a long flight over, and then you're going to get a few hours, maybe 24 hours to recover on time zones, and then we're going to go, right? And so when we were leading up to that, as a referee team, the three of us, we made sure that we did some matches together. So we are in form. We are sending clips to each other like, okay, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Hey, if we have something like this, like, how are we going to talk through this? Like over the radio communication, huge, right?
Exactly.
Like, sure, we could have a whole conversation, but if that conversation takes 45 seconds when the decision is 10 seconds long, like we gotta, how are we actually going to communicate this? So it's all those kind of small things that lead up as our referee crew together to lead to this point. Then the physical training continued. I had to run a fitness test, obviously, at the beginning of the year, but then for FIFA itself, we had to do a fitness test. So it's like a benchmark test. So there was benchmarks, and they were slightly faster for World Cup standard as opposed to just the international standard. And so we did that. And then it was kind of just do matches and be mentally in a place ready to get to work.
Gotcha.
And so we did a few matches. I did like a trip to like LA and then across to Colorado, and we kind of like just in MLS, and my manager in MLS, knowing we were doing this, they start aligning the pieces of the puzzle to make things work out, right? And make sure everybody is in the best form that they can, because obviously we're all working together on the same team.
You guys are a team, exactly.
Exactly. And so we line that up, and so I tell my athletic trainer, I'm like, okay, so this is the date that I'm flying. This is the date I'm running the fitness test. And he starts morphing his schedule around what matches I'm going to do and whatever. And he's like, okay, so we're going to do endurance here, and then we're going to do some more high intensity. And then I need you to have a little bit more of a lull, maybe a little more strength, some yoga, some stretching, like leading into that. And then we'll build it back up so that you're not running like at the red line, like when you arrive. So we want to make sure you're healthy and whatever. And like he sends me things that I'm like, I would never have done like this strength workout. I'm not a strong type person, but he's like, no, you're going to do this. Here it is. Here's the video. Like, do this. And it keeps you healthy, right? Like it's all like making sure all of
even
that
if you're just
stuff.
like
Nothing.
Regular person,
a normal
working a desk job,
working a desk job, like all of those muscles that you don't think you use, you want to be able to use, and like he finds them and he gets that all set up.
That's amazing.
That mentally, once we got into Paris and we had 5 or 6 days there of that training, and it was 2 or 3 hours on a practice field. They have practice players there. They have VAR system set up. They have 5 or 6 fitness coaches plus the technical coaches. All of those things ready to go for us. And so we run through that 5 days. So it's morning training session, and then the afternoon we're in the classroom trying to get everybody on the same page just to build to that Olympic kickoff.
Just working.
And so just working.
All the time.
And so we were there, it was like 5 straight days. And so on day 4 or 5 of that, they're like, okay, so our games start in 2 days, because soccer started 2 days before the opening ceremony. And so they're like, we're starting, and that's when they started announcing, like, here's the first match. This is who's going to be the opening first matches.
So you found out? You didn't find out?
We find out like 2 days before. Like 2 days before we are there, and
they really try to keep you guys on your toes.
Well, but it's to protect themselves, because if they announced every match, if you knew every referee of every match around the world at one moment, so there's a little bit of like it's a secure thing.
No, that
Right?
yeah, I never thought about it
Right?
that way. That's really
Because
interesting.
there's lots of things that can be, contributed, or somebody says this happened. Like, it doesn't even have to happen. Somebody just has to suspect that
Yeah,
things are not going
exactly.
as possible. So it's 2 days
and
before.
all it takes is one article, right? Or
One article, whatever. So we're 2 days before, and then so once we got, I think we're on the second match day. So we were, what is that? The second or third day of the actual Olympics after the opening ceremonies. That's when we did a game in Paris right away, and so we had 1 day to do the training right before. Then it was match day, and then we move on from there. So all that physical, mental training, like it was work. Like we were there. It was right through the entire tournament. We were working and staying busy.
That's amazing. That's so not a bunch of time to explore the village and stuff like that. Or you guys kind of
So we
were in a different area,
we were situated in like a Marriott just outside like Paris. Like we were in Paris, sort of, but just outside. And it
probably
was,
again a little bit of safety there.
FIFA had the whole hotel. It was their staff.
Lockdown.
We had our physiotherapist, our massage therapists are all
awesome.
there.
Yeah.
They handled the food at the hotel, all of that. So like we're bused to the training field. You get back off here. They pick you up when you're going to a game, bring you to the train station. You get off. We have our transportation. Like all of that. All those small decisions, you have no say.
They're taking care of it.
You're taking care of at that point.
That's really cool.
And so all of that we don't touch at all. And so I was not on the first match day. So when the men started playing, I was not on a game.
Mm-hmm.
So the other AR I was with from Quebec had been to Paris a few times, and it was my first time. And I was like, look,
that's cool.
This is the first day we have off. The games are this afternoon.
Yeah.
We're going to watch the games,
Yeah.
but we have this morning. And so we gunned it out of that hotel as quickly as possible, and found our way over to the Eiffel Tower and all that. And the Olympics proper hadn't actually started yet, so it wasn't crazy busy.
The crowds weren't too
bad, so we could actually get around Paris pretty well and see all the things. We went across like the bridge and looked across the Seine with where the opening ceremonies was going to be, and like we could see it all set up and ready. But it was like, this is my moment to go do that, because once we came back, matches started. We were debriefing clips. We were back at work, right?
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
That was that first opportunity to really get out, and then after that, it was back to work.
That's so cool, and like getting it. Those are just things I never really would have thought about, right? Like being able to have that time to go out and experience it for yourself and take it in a little bit, right?
Yeah,
I'm at the Olympics.
You're at the Olympics, right? And I mean, one of the things I told my wife when I got back, like once we started and we did a game and whatever, the grandiose of the event never actually hit me until I was back at home, and I was watching like highlights of a game or watching my game back, and it's got the Olympic logo like on the TV, and there was like clips of like they sent us a promotional video of all the referees working out there, and it's like clips of the Olympics, and I was like, oh, I was there.
That was me.
That was me. That was cool. But like you're so focused on just getting the job done while you're there. That it doesn't quite feel the same way. And so
not as much time to reflect.
There's not so much time to reflect. And there are things that I do to make sure I take in those moments.
Okay.
On most matches, I will always, when the whistle's done, and assuming nobody's trying to start a fight or anything at the end of the game, I usually try to take at least one moment just to look around, absorb the atmosphere, notice that while still doing my job. And then the other time is like during warm up, right? Like when we're warming up on the field and the fans are trickling in and the teams are out there. I was at the Olympics, but I was looking around, and there's like people filtering in and they're chanting, and there's like the international teams everywhere. And it's like, okay, this is my moment. Like get physically ready, but like
mentally,
deal with that mentalness now, because like we're not checking stuff out when we're doing
you're all business, right?
We're all business once that first whistle goes. So
and speaking of once that first whistle goes, that's, I mean, maybe before sometimes. That's kind of when fans start to get into it too.
Yeah.
So being a ref, I know probably not as much, even close to as much as you know, but just that fans, let's call them passionate.
They're very passionate.
They are. And so I'm sure you found yourself kind of right in between the two sides before, people yelling, saying stuff. How do you deal with that? Because that's something you're on the spotlight. They're wanting you to react, but you kind of can't. And
so that's actually, it's twofold, because honestly, it is actually way more difficult at an amateur level. Like if you go to a game here in Lethbridge, having the fans on you there is way more difficult than me standing in the 68,000 people I did in like San Francisco. Like 68,000 people screaming at you, it's just noise. right?
Just noise,
It's
okay.
just noise. Unless there's like weird moments where somebody yells at you and it's like quiet and suddenly you hear someone, you're like,
So more so like you can pick out exactly what
individual
they're saying.
voices. Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Individual voices are different than whatever, right?
Yeah. So you hear
And
more
so-
context, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you're here at a smaller level and there's a person like sitting right behind you and he's yelling and there's like 100 people, like that
Oh,
one
yeah.
person yelling
Oh,
at
I
you
bet.
makes a huge, and
It's a louder voice.
it's a
I
louder
guess, yeah.
voice. It carries more weight because
Yeah.
like that is 1/100th of the people watching the game.
Yeah.
Where, you know, one person in 70,000, you don't really notice that as much.
Yeah, I bet.
The guys close, you really can sometimes,
Mhm.
but it's one of those things like being mentally strong, like knowing
yeah.
what you are capable of, what you have done to get to this point, and that. One of the advantages to video review that we have these days is when we make a close decision like that,
Little
and
bit
they
of
come over
validation.
and tell us you're correct. It
Mhm.
does ease those nerves kind of a lot. Like when the guy comes
Oh,
in
I
and he
bet.
goes, "Nope, check complete. Like it's onside. You're good, right?"
And
Or-
even if it was the other way around, at least
At
now
least
I
you know
You're-
immediately.
You're not like you're not staying up.
You're
and
not
like, oh, did
sitting
I
there
screw
for
it
the
up?
next
Did I screw
60
it up?
minutes thinking
Yeah.
about that one decision.
Yeah.
Whereas, right? And so when now, occasionally, I just actually had a game in Costa Rica and we didn't have VAR. And so
Oh, wow.
now suddenly you're going to go back to those old ways and like
Yeah.
just be mentally tough all the way through the game and go, okay, no, you nailed it. Like you've done this for so long. Like you're going to go check. I'm going to go check the video afterwards. Like, trust me.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah.
that person screaming, like you just have to be mentally tough and
In the moment, I guess.
in the
right?
moment
Yeah.
you just are strong. And look, many players, like they'll come and talk to you that it's the same thing, like they're trying to win, right? And I understand that.
yeah.
They're passionate.
Yep.
But when they're pushing for it, you know, maybe I got it wrong, and sometimes like I'm not going to be perfect all the time.
No, and if people, that's the craziest thing is people always expect officials in any sport to be perfect.
Exactly. And I'm like, look, somebody comes up and they're like, look, maybe I saw it wrong. I'm just telling you what I saw. If I got it wrong, I'm sorry.
Yep.
And, you know, hopefully I try not to say that when it's like the game winning decision on an offside, like whatever. But if it's a throw in that somebody's losing their mind about, I'm like, I really don't understand why you're so angry. Maybe I did get it wrong. Right? Because like or a goal kick, corner kick, and they're really upset about it. And I'm like,
the world's going to end if
and I'm
this
like,
call
this
doesn't
is
get made.
so weird. But like nothing came out of this because it was a defensive free kick, and we've now played 2 minutes, and so nothing happened because of the call. But you're still mad, and so usually that's where conversations with players helps, or conversations with the coach if you're standing right in front of them and go, look, if I saw it wrong, like I'm sorry.
Yeah,
but
like I can own up to it. I'm human.
Right, I'm human. I can see it. But I'm like, no, I saw it and it hit the guy's toe going out. And he's like, oh, I didn't see that because I'm further away or whatever, right? But when it comes to like the fans, like you do not make eye contact. Because the moment you make eye contact, they know you can hear them.
Yeah.
Sometimes you hear some entertaining things. And so
I imagine. But even just if they're bugging you or whatever.
Even if they're bugging you, like it's entertaining. And unfortunately, not so many are very creative these days. And I'm like, okay, I've heard that one before. I've heard that one before. But every so often somebody catches one with you and you're like, okay, that was pretty good. Nice. I would actually, I kind of want to congratulate you on that one, but
it's kind of like the subtle, like,
yeah, exactly, good job, that kind of thing. So
that's hilarious. And that's, I mean, it sounds like you're somebody who's you got to be pretty comfortable with yourself at that point, right?
Definitely.
And you mentioned like communicating with players, communicating with coaches. That's obviously something that comes in when you're officiating. But on the world stage, like when you're at the Olympics, there's a lot of different nationalities, a lot of different languages. Is that an issue that comes up, or is there ways to mitigate through that or to work through that?
FIFA works in English, so all our so you have to be speaking English to be at the course. Okay, so like they don't translate.
I didn't know that.
Nothing like that. So you must speak English if you want to be in that room. So that is the operating language. However, many people there speak more than one language.
Oh, I imagine.
And so when we were at the Olympics, both Drew and Leas, they both speak French.
Yep.
I do not. I did not take French immersion here in Southern Alberta. That was not something.
I
am working on my Spanish because in Central America, that is very helpful to me, right? Yep. And so when we have exchange students at school, I usually try to push myself a little bit and teach some math in Spanish and be like, okay, this. And they're like, wait, you can actually. I'm like, no. This is about the depth of my Spanish, but you know that is something
bring back a little bit
here, that everybody's kind of working on. And soccer or football, it's kind of a universal language in the fact that even if you don't understand the words I'm saying, there are signals or things you point to, or like
you can emphasize your body language.
It doesn't take a lot to get, like no foul.
Yeah.
No, right? And
or even just like, calm down.
Exactly.
Like, we're chilling here. We're
calm,
good.
all of that. So there's lots of small phrases when you're dealing with players or coaches who don't speak the same language. But oftentimes, as officials on that international stage, we are trying to have the best opportunity to communicate that we can.
Yeah.
And so if that means the head coach actually has like a translator on the bench, maybe we're just saying, translator, hey, like, I know you're not going to translate exactly what I say, but this is what I like. Come on.
Get these points across. Yeah.
This is what I'm trying to say. And he's upset about something. Tell me what it is. Like, if I can't. But most of the time, you can usually gauge something, right? And it's usually pretty good. And so there are a lot of basic words that and you kind of learn in different languages, even if that is, here, stop, back up. These are like the first things.
The fundamental stuff.
The fundamentals where you can start ordering people around to stop something.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, wait, maybe you do understand. So I'm not going to, we're okay. Right. So making that effort does make a difference.
It's like like a tourist going to France. You learn how do I say, where's the bathroom?
Exactly.
Right?
You learn you learn the fundamentals and then you make that effort and people are like, okay, you tried.
Yep.
I actually can speak English. So I'm going to help you now. But
let's just skip that step.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's amazing. And then, so you mentioned these support systems that FIFA sounds like they're amazing.
Yep.
They treat
refs MLS, like Canada MLS, Soccer, everybody. There are organizations ready to go. And we have, like at FIFA, we had like massage therapists, so we could sign up, like all of that. We had fitness coaches who would like adapt our fitness training depending on how you felt. If you're, if you're feeling sore today and we need to do less running, then you're going to do less running. And if you're out there like turning up the grass real good, they're like, okay, that guy needs to run more today. And so they would adapt that to us. And that happens with our local training too.
Cool.
Like,
nice.
So whatever I get sent from my fitness coach. But in terms of support, like the more human side, that is like mentors, friends, other referees who are in this. Like my phone is full of numbers where you text and it's like, hey, sorry, man, like I saw, like this didn't go your way, or congrats on the appointment, or hey, I just saw you got appointed to the All-Star game. Like, congratulations. It's a community. It's a family, right? Like it's that. And then also like, I could not be doing this without support of my employer. Like this that is the juggling act I will always be doing.
Need that support.
Correct.
Or like you need to know that they have your back.
Yep.
And that you are doing your best for them.
So they're super supportive that way. And like we communicate. I'm not calling in sick to miss games. You're gonna see me on TSN and I called in sick. That doesn't seem like a good decision. But I'm like, okay, the moment I find out, like the order when I know I'm traveling somewhere is I tell my wife, I tell my principal, and then I tell the HR person, I'm like, this is where I'm going, this is what I need. That's pretty as long as they can support it, they do so. And then my wife is a freaking saint because the amount of time I am on the road and like on a non-international tournament year. So let's say I don't do a big tournament, like 27, 41 days away from home, like that in itself is insane. But if it's just like teach 5 days a week, fly somewhere, do an MLS game Saturday, fly back Sunday, teach 5 days a week, fly Friday, do a game Saturday, fly back Sunday, like that schedule itself, she is amazing to even
just a rock star at home,
even to have the conversation about like, this is what's going to happen. And so, and
the understanding too,
and the understanding, and she's been with me through this whole like since getting the FIFA badge, so she's grown into it a little bit too. Going, okay, these are the games that you can say no to. These are the ones that you're never going to say no to, right? Like when the international assignment comes, it's like, no, that's difficult to say no to. But if it's like, okay, MLS, are you available? Someone's asking, I'm like, no, but what do you need it for? And then we talk them through like what is going to be best for our family, right?
That's so amazing that you're able to have that conversation with them, even right too. Like that's one of my favorite things that I kind of am enjoying about professional sports and the high level sports is that like individuals, officials, players, coaches, we're all like they're more than just that. Like, they're human. Everybody's a human, right? And we're all people trying to go through this world together. Yeah. And when we can kind of respect each other, that's when it just works well. I mean, it seems like things worked well. And one thing that I like to ask athletes when I interview them is like what was a roadblock to becoming that? Right. Is there, what's that roadblock look like in the officiating world? Like, is there something that kind of throughout your career of getting up to that top
So the roadblock is balancing life. That is going to be the general roadblock for most people. If you wanted to like go up to a higher level, balancing career, personal, and reffing, that is an insane juggling act that
And how
very few people can do. And it has worked out for me. I pray that it continues to work out, and we'll keep that going. But that happens to like even the younger kids, or even like late teens who join officials. Then they go to college and university, and then you got to get a job. And it's like, well, is reffing going to pay the same amount? And then it's like, and then you start maybe dating more in college and university, and then you're like hanging out with friends, and it's like, where did those priorities go? Yeah. So balancing life is the hugest block when it comes to just people going up in levels in reffing. Because until you get over that hump and you're like, okay, now I'm doing this at the next level, it can feel like a little bit of a slog too, where you're working, you're in the system, and you're working, and like maybe you're not seeing the results that you expect to. And so that can become very like, it can push you down. And you're like, well, why am I doing this? Exactly, like, do I really want to, like, look, this is the 4th weekend away that I'm doing something at a youth tournament. Like, I could be at home seeing my friends for the first time in 5 weeks, right? And so balancing those priorities.
Knowing that, like, when the timing of when to make that sacrifice.
Right, exactly. Drawing the line, knowing what it is. And maybe it's not a clear-cut stop. Maybe it's okay, I'm like, here's the note. And next week you can do that zigzag. But once you're in there, I do recall, like, there was a game in Calgary that did not go well. I was the referee. It did not go well. Look, I didn't determine the outcome of the match. But like for referees who were watching the game, everybody knew that I was bad. Okay. And I was like, that was just like wind out of the sails here. And so you just kind of went from there, and it was like, oh, like, and you're just on this upward trajectory where it's like, oh, like things are going well, and you're like, this is good. I'm going to keep growing. I'm going to keep going. And then suddenly it was like, oh, that wasn't, and then like there was, I remember the conversation, like one of the other referees who was doing pro games at the time, he sat down with me, and I'm sitting, there's another game going on, and he's like, so how was the game? And I'm like, he's like, nope, that was garbage. Like, let's be honest. I'm like, it was like, let's call a spade a spade. And like, those conversations, like those make a difference, because otherwise you can just completely implode. Like if nobody reaches out to you, like, imagine like when you mess up on a test, like even in school, or you mess up on your job, the moment you can go home and ignore everybody, that's when you feel better. But that's probably not where you grow the most.
No, and that it's lingering the whole time. You might be distracting yourself.
Yeah, you're doing something else. It's still there. Like you're thinking about it. But
TV
for someone,
shuts off at the end of the night. It's like, hey, remember
it's
this?
Still there, right? And so like talking it, it's like, okay, this was it. Like what happened? Like what was it? Like, and you try and come up, and maybe you don't have the solution.
No,
right? But it is part of that reflection and being able to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And so when you hit those roadblocks, when you have that terrible match, or when the year doesn't go exactly as you thought, or the year I didn't get hired in MLS, right? Like these are things, these are setbacks, but they're also opportunities. And so you kind of have to look at it that way, and it's very difficult to do so. Like I can be a slogan and say this on a podcast here and be like, turn that frown upside down and take that negative and make it no.
Of course, easier said than done.
It's easier said than done.
That's what it is, though.
But that's what it is, right? And so you don't know what's around the next corner, but you got to keep working, and you're like, okay, so if this didn't work, what does this mean? And I'm like, sometimes that's motivation. Like I got cut from something once, and I think that winter I trained much, much more difficult, like much harder going, no, like I'm going to show that I belong here. And so that's part of that process too.
That's cool. And that's like anything, whether you're, with any aspect of life, you're in business, you're a teacher, you're a referee, you're a professional athlete, anything like that, you're kind of like, it's you make it there because of how you respond to adversity. Yeah. Right. And that's kind of one big thing. And I know we're kind of getting short on time here, but one thing I wanted to talk about is just bringing back to our local communities, like Lethbridge, Coaldale, kind of where your roots are. A big thing is in teams and communities like officiating crews is culture.
Yes.
And not that there's a right way or wrong way, but just from your experience, what would you say is the best way to go about building a culture? What's the most important piece of building that culture at the local levels?
So at the local level, that culture piece, and in terms of, and it's the whole sporting community, it's going to be communication. Communication is a huge thing. And if they're communicating with each other, the officials with coaches who know how to communicate, there are coaches who don't. So we don't want to communicate with them. But that is from the people organizing the officials, that is the organizations of the league, so that everybody is kind of communicating. Like Wouldn't it be great if you knew,
Wouldn't
as a
it be
coach,
great?
your team, like the coach, not all the players, depending on the level, but if you knew that you have 2 hockey referees coming out on the ice, and you knew before the game that one of them, this was his 3rd game at this level.
Oh,
And look, it might not be perfect. Like, nobody's winning the Stanley Cup here. Like, we are playing in like
that's
the
the thing,
5th
right?
division.
At the local level, that's what so many people need to remember.
And you're like, I need you to just remember that your players are learning. He's learning as well,
yes.
right? And we look and
Just
be
give a
straight
little
with
bit of
him. Be
grace.
like, yeah, he's green, but here's the guy who's done 267 games this year,
Yeah,
right? Like,
Exactly.
we're not dumb when we throw out. Like, nobody is throwing out 2 rookies on like.
This isn't 12-year-old Michael on Monday right after he wrote his test.
Exactly.
Next to Johnny who just wrote his test on
Monday.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
People who are organizing that, they're a little more methodical most of the time. I'm sure there's times that schedules and life get in the way, but generally,
the effort's there.
Exactly.
They're going to try to do
so,
it. Yep.
And there's somebody in the crowd who's probably there, the organizer or whatever, is probably watching this new referee, or if they're 14, like their dad is watching them on the field, right? Like that is, come on, my wife has been in professional games where people are screaming at me, and she's like, what am I supposed to, like, am I supposed to scream at you too? Like, just to fit in? Like, you didn't take out the garbage. Like,
and it just happens to be that one fan that speaks out. You look up.
Thanks, honey. But, right? Like, but there's a person there. Like, there's a person, and there's this, so locally,
and not only a person, but a 14-year-old person.
Right, exactly. And it's like their dad, their mom is sitting there. They're going to go home. They have that normal life. So just like communicate. If they made a mistake, let them own it. Let them. Yeah. And if they're like, no, I didn't make a mistake, and this is what I saw, you go, okay, we all move on. Like nobody's living and dying by this. Like we're all playing a sport, whatever that sport is. Like you have the availability to play a sport for fun.
Yes, like I always say, sport is a privilege.
Right.
No matter which way you look at it, it's something we're able to do, and some people get to call it work. That's
that's crazy. That's amazing. Like that's awesome, right? But for others, like you are in a privileged position to be able to enjoy this moment. And look, if you don't agree for 5 seconds, like let's move on, right?
If everybody agreed,
it would be great. And hey, look, if you disagree with all the referees, I challenge you. Then just go do it yourself. Like if you're better than everybody else, please do it. There's your challenge.
I agree, and that's the best part. Is like, you know what? It's not. I'm not saying I think you can do a better job than me, but I'd like you to just step in my shoes for just half a minute.
Just try it.
Exactly, and that's huge. Communication and that makes sense. I mean, at any level, and I assume
so many things.
You can kind of translate that to all the way up. To the top of the board.
You have to be able to communicate on everything. But at the local level, just communication and working with everyone, and that can be players, coaches, organizers, officials. Like you're all part of the same thing. Look, you want
the sport to grow,
right? Players are like, well, there's no game if we don't have players, and we're like, well, there's no game if there's no referees.
Exactly.
Well, there's no game if there's not another team. Like you need everyone. Otherwise, none of this is happening.
All connected.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. And so, Michael, this has been absolutely fantastic so far. Kind of one last thing I like asking everybody that comes on here is especially coming from Lethbridge and knowing what the community did for you, allowing you to grow into the game you love and become this Lethbridge phenom, as one might say. And just, I guess, if you could be remembered when all said is done, what would you like your legacy in Lethbridge to be?
I really think, like, it's weird because way back when I started doing the professional games, it was like I didn't need to be the person in the middle. I didn't need the spotlight. I didn't need anything like that. And so for me, I wanted to be the assistant, helping the guy in the middle, make him look better. Nobody needs to know what I'm doing. I'm telling him what he needs to do there. In the middle on the headset and with the flag and all of that. And I didn't need to be the center of attention. And so for me, that was like part of my personality going through, right? I don't need everybody to remember, that's Mike Barwegen. He went to the Olympics and he did like the FIFA thing and he did this and this and this. It's very humble, It's like, no, he did that. And like, he actually, did something better for the sport in the region, right? Or, he was there when somebody had a question, or, awesome. my availability to do like games here in Lethbridge, that is very low right now, just in terms of time and travel. But, if someone was like, hey, can you let me ask you a question about this,
Yeah.
or run into.
Can I give you a phone call?
Can I give you a
over
phone
lunch or
call?
something like that? Or,
I'm driving to the Calgary airport all the time. I got 2 hours for phone calls weekly, man.
Yeah,
so
we can make it happen.
We can make that happen. But just being able to be that voice, be that just that calmness and that availability to help others, and just kind of be part of that recognizing the bigger game without being the bigger game, right?
Very cool. Kind of like that hand guiding the people.
Exactly. Just
that's
kind of
amazing.
in the background helping out there. So
that's amazing. And before we part today, is there any kind of advice you'd give to young referees starting out? If you could go back and tell 12-year-old, 13-year-old Michael,
I would tell him to buy a watch faster. But I would. So if you're not already an official, I would say give it a go. You don't I didn't know that I was going to get here. Like that's
great advice.
This is great. Like just try, right? Like maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll like officiating, but you'll hate reffing the sport you love or like the sport you participated in. There are so many different sports that you can get involved in, and they have different like abilities that are required to do different things. Maybe some require running, some require skating, some require just standing. But you have to know what you're doing. So if you're not involved in officiating, I think you should try it.
That's
and
awesome.
there are certain people who recognize they probably shouldn't. But they can still try. And then we can move on. Do it once, and then you go, nope, this is definitely.
And you know what? Maybe that makes you a better coach down the road, or a better.
And then if you're already in there, I would say enjoy every moment, because there are times when I can recall U-14 games that I was at. I remember distinctly some of the lower level amateur games I was at, even more so than some of the professional games I was at. And it's like all of those moments kind of build to who you are as a person, who you are as a referee, and who you are, just moving forward. And so just thinking about those and enjoying it. If you're not enjoying it, then you probably aren't doing the right thing. But if you can get out there and officiate and enjoy the moment and just enjoy the people who are there, because there's also people you're going to be reffing with, and like, trust me, those people, they're not the ones who are going to disappear on you real fast. They're going to be there. They're going to be that text message, that phone call at night, and you probably need it more than others. Or that's where you lean on. That's who you lean on. So there's a huge community that you can find yourself in by just joining and getting started in officiating. And I think there's a world of information and a world of opportunities all over the board in all the sports to find yourself in.
I love that advice. Just give it a go, right?
Yeah.
What have you got to lose?
Exactly.
Well, Michael, this has been, I've really, really loved this. Thank you very
awesome.
much. Thanks for taking the time to speak to us today. We definitely wish you all the best. And
thank you.
It'll be fun watching, what's next for
Yeah,
Micheal
turn
Barwegen.
on the TV and someday you might see that person going back and forth.
I know that guy in the stripes.
I know that guy. It's funny. My nephews are like, "Are we watching Mike on TV today?" And I'll be sitting on the couch behind him. Nope, not today, guys. Like, I'm right here. Like, hi.
We check the PVR. Maybe we'll get to
maybe
it.
we'll find a game that we did. But no, it's cool, and hopefully people can stay on top of it, watch assignments, and see what comes up next.
Appreciate that. Well. Thank you. And for everybody listening, as always, like, subscribe, and give us a comment if you liked what we saw today. And stay tuned for who our next guest is. All right.